Just two more. Just waiting for X and for LinkedIn. So X and LinkedIn are now live. Okay, all good. Hello, my name is Darren Joseph with HNWIs Tax. We're a team that seeks to demystify the sometimes confusing world of cross-border taxation. And today we have the honor and the privilege of speaking to Timur. Timur, would you like to introduce yourself to those that don't already know who you are?
Hello, Darren. Thank you for your kind invitation to join the webinar today. Well, my name is Timur. I am, first of all, an investment migration professional. I've been working in the industry since 2014. 2020, we've established a company called World Talents, since we've seen there was a huge demand in the market, and the currents were telling us that there needed to be an alternative to the golden visas, especially in Europe, since there was a lot of criticism from the EU towards the classical investment migration programs.
Absolutely. And today we're going to focus on Portugal. So, there's been, of course, Portugal has been in the news in terms of the investment migration space and the international tax space. And the question remains, are you still, generally speaking, are you still bullish when it comes to Portugal? Do you think it is that high demand destination that it was like a few months ago? And if so, why? Why Portugal? Why is Portugal such a great place to be?
Well, apart from Portugal being a great place to live in, which you know well about, one of the big motives for the investor migrants to consider Portugal was an opportunity to obtain EU citizenship after 5 years of holding residency permit. That, I would say, has always been a number one point in why Portugal. Then the second very important motive was a tax-wise Plan B option, since there was an availability of a special tax regime of NHR. And number three, it is a destination of a lifetime. It's a place to be. And since the investment migration industry is commonly seen, and it is indeed a place, it is an industry which is responsible for the Plan B. Your Plan B must match your expectations for where one might want to live in. And Portugal is definitely the place.
Okay, fantastic. And we'll jump into some of those points later on. But what I think what made me really want to have a conversation with you is because you have, to me, a value proposition that I've not heard from anybody else. You're the only person that I'm aware of. Maybe there are others, but you're the only one that I heard of, like, speaking to this mechanism for enjoying not just Portuguese residency, but to put you on track towards the citizenship that you spoke about. Could you tell us more about how your residency option works?
Would you want me to explore more on the residency option or on the route to citizenship?
Both, please. Please. I'm speaking specifically about the university angle.
Okay, so as I mentioned a little bit earlier, Golden Visa as an institute has been receiving a lot of criticism from the EU, not only from the EU, but also from the OECD. Programs have been multiple times mentioned in the reports as a way to abuse tax recommendations. So it was clear, it has become clear quite some time ago that investment migration is facing very serious issues, mainly politically motivated. And probably because of that, in the practical terms, especially in Portugal, it was working out in a way that the processes were taking a lot of time. From the practical perspective, it worked. The application could be taking longer than 2 years, and as a service, any investment migration product is supposed to be not only practical but also not to be more efficient, and time is of essence for many of the clients. And when we had our cases pending for more than 2.5 years, it was clear that we had to be looking for alternatives. So we've worked with multiple lawyers on how to achieve similar results, which Golden Visa can provide the clients with in terms of residency to citizenship. And one of the routes which we have looked at was highly qualified activity residents. And that route allows applicants to obtain residency in Portugal as any other route, based on different grounds. There are 3 different options to obtain highly qualified residency in Portugal. That can be employment contract, service agreement, or an invitation from high institution in Portugal, meaning the university can be such. Moving along, so we've been working with our partner at that time on developing the relationship with universities and promoting the program as an alternative to Golden Visa. And technically, it is working in the following manner. When one can get a residency permit based on the invitation from the university, and extend it further based on the very same contract, which is going to be concluded with the university. The residency permit is issued for 2 years and further extended for the next 3 years. That provides the client a path for 5 years to obtain citizenship further. What's important to say is that the general rule with physical presence is only applicable in terms of physical presence. Exceptions for the physical presence 7-day rule is only applicable to the Golden Visa. But in order to be more flexible with the physical presence with the HQA, we had to develop the relationship with the universities and between the universities and our clients and clients entrepreneurs in a manner which would allow them flexibility. And our contracts are structured in such a manner which allows them to be outside the country for the purpose of immigration. That will serve to their best interest when they have to extend the residency permit, meaning that there is a requirement to be in Portugal. Although due to the contract they have with the university, they can be outside, and rest assured that the residency permit is going to be extended in the next after the 2 years pass after the first residency permit is issued. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, it does. Absolutely, it does. So that's why, just being so specific, that's why I think that this is such an interesting option, because it is an alternative. As you said, we're aware of what's going on in the media. There have been legal action taken by Golden Visa applicants, et cetera, lots of delays, insiders apparently leaking things to the media or whatever. But this allows a relatively quicker process. May I ask, how fast is the application process typically?
Well, provided so the average would be 2 months, which is 8 weeks. We do have applications which have been approved on the date of the application being submitted. So the residency card will state, so when one applies for the residency permit, let's say 1st of January, the date of the issuance of the residency card will correlate with the date when it's been approved. It is still going to take some time to have the residency card printed and delivered to the applicant's house. But we had residency cards approved on the date of submission of the application. It would further take another 2 weeks before it's actually delivered. But this is how quick the process sometimes is. But that's the fastest. Obviously, the average
Mm-hmm.
is a bit longer, which
Mm-hmm.
is an approximation of 8 weeks, 2 months. We
Mm-hmm.
did have delays. It happened, well, it happened once when we had an application pending for 7 months, but the
Mm-hmm.
specifics that we had the application submitted in the central immigration office, which is overloaded with
Mm-hmm.
processes. That is something we had to learn the hard way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So obviously the client was not happy. And sometimes it's 3 or 4 months, but the average is, as I said, 2 months. It's pretty quick. The extensions are
Right.
now taking place automatically. So
Yeah.
what's needed to be done is just to submit a request for an extension of the residency permit. It
Mm-hmm.
sometimes is not working out for whatever the reason is. It's just like
Mm-hmm.
technical issues at the immigration
Mm-hmm.
offices. So when our clients have to attend the immigration office, we usually provide the letter of support from the university to extend the
Mm-hmm.
residency. The process
Mm-hmm.
is very, very smooth.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And in terms of the fees, how much is the cost of this of pursuing this pathway?
So the cost of the program, which includes the entire family, the main applicant, the spouse,
Mm-hmm.
children, dependent parents of both the spouse and the main applicant, would be 170,000 euro, which
Mm-hmm.
involves which is the only participation fee. That would assume that a client would have to pay us, and we will arrange the three-party contract between the university and the client further on.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. So, of course, this is quite attractive because it is potentially a fraction of the golden visa package pathway, and it's the more, and for those who have wealth or income that they perhaps would like to protect, it allows them to get residency and be on the path to citizenship without necessarily being tax resident because they're not doing the time in Portugal. Am I correct in saying that?
That is correct. Under current national
Mm-hmm.
legislation for naturalization purposes, it is only required to provide the proof of holding the residency permit for 5 years,
Mm-hmm.
and the minimum and to provide the the proof of minimum proficiency in Portuguese, which is an A2 level. It's an elementary level of Portuguese.
Okay, gotcha. And have you
Although
had?
one needs to be aware, that's a very important
Mhm.
question you've raised, because the application for citizenship is going to be submitted after 5 years
Yes.
upon the issuance of the first residency permit,
Hmm.
and we need to be prepared for the potential changes in the legislation.
Hmm.
To our experience and beliefs, it is most likely going to relate towards the connection to the country, and
Mm.
have created the program in a manner when the client needs to be in a certain way involved in the university's activity related to the development of the startup ecosystem. In most simple terms, we expect our
Mm.
clients to be entrepreneurs, executives. Allow me just to take care of this
For
messages
sure.
here.
Yeah, yeah,
Not
go for
quite.
it. Mm.
1 second. There we go. Done.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, yeah. So we expect our clients to be involved in the university's activities related to the developments.
Mm.
Some of the clients are being appointed as mentors to different projects,
Mm.
to startups, which are hosted by the business incubators
Hmm.
at the universities. Some
Hmm.
clients prefer to start their own projects with the university,
Hmm.
within the university's ecosystem.
Hmm.
Some clients prefer to provide the funding to early stage projects, since these are the
Hmm.
projects which are the most difficult ones to attract funding at the
Hmm.
idea stage, practically.
Hmm.
Yeah, so these are the free forms of how the client can participate in the university's activity, in the university's life.
Hmm.
And that is automatically creating a certain connection to the country through the work and collaboration with the university and startup projects at the business
Hmm.
incubators.
Okay, so to be clear, If it is that someone just wants residency for 5 years, then yeah, you just do whatever, right? But if it is, you just pay the money, you get your residency permit, and you don't need to be there physically, you don't need to be involved or whatever. But if it is that you want it to be a genuine pathway to citizenship, you need to be involved. And there are three options, as you mentioned, for getting involved in a university and therefore proving the connection necessary as part of the citizenship application. Am I correct?
That is not exactly correct for the time being.
Okay.
For the time being, if we
Yeah.
are to submit our imagine we are to submit our
Mhm.
applications for citizenship tomorrow,
Yeah.
then the only documentary proof for the successful application we would need is the proof of
Mhm.
holding the residency permit for 5 years. It is
Mhm.
constituted by the certificate issued by the immigration authority
Sure.
that the
Yeah.
person A has had their residency permit for 5 years. Number
Mhm.
one. Number two, we would need to provide the proof uh of knowledge of Portuguese.
Yeah.
That is it. Although, since we're expecting, I cannot say we are expecting, but it is only normal that the legislation in
Mhm.
in immigration is constantly changing, and it is not
Yeah.
always changing to the benefit of a resident.
Right.
Uh,
Mhm.
we can see that there are certain tendencies taking place in different countries, and so far
Mhm.
Portugal has been having a very soft requirements towards citizenship,
Yeah.
which does not mean that it is going to continue to be so. Therefore,
Mhm.
we can provide for our clients to make sure that after 5 years of holding residency, their applications for citizenship are going to be successful, is to
Mhm.
make sure that they have a genuine link with the country. And one of
Mhm.
the ways to have a proof of that genuine link is to have the collaboration with the university. So the idea of the
Mhm.
program is, from one perspective, we need to have our clients' interests and we need to have the product which will help our clients facilitate their successful future after 5 years.
Mhm.
From another side, it is a program which is benefiting Portugal and universities in Portugal. It's startup ecosystem. We are
Mhm.
creating, the program's name is Global Talent Portugal HQA
Mhm.
Residence. What we are doing effectively is we are creating a network of entrepreneurs and executive professionals from around the world who are accessible for the startups, for the universities, who
Mhm.
make their expertise available to the institutions in Portugal. That's
Mhm.
how we are benefiting, apart
Mhm.
obviously from the financial side, because part of the
Mhm.
funding which we receive from the client goes to the university,
Mhm. Okay.
or a project at the university, or a project which is being established by a client at the
Mhm.
university business incubator.
Okay, understood. And just to repeat, the proper title for your program is Global Talent Portugal Executive
It's
was
Global Talent Portugal HQA Residence.
HQA.
HQA
Uh-huh.
is the count for residence. So that is
Mm,
how one applies for the residency. That is why it's HQA
mm.
residence. But the program has a brand name, which is a Global Talent Portugal.
Right. Okay, gotcha. Okay, understood.
Although you make it
So,
on HQA residence.
mm, okay. Could you talk more to the physical presence requirements? Is it that there are none? Or what is the minimum amount of time should one reasonably expect to spend in Portugal under this program?
Well, so physical presence requirements are
Mhm.
are the most demanding ones to be explained.
Okay.
As I mentioned a little bit earlier, it is only
Mhm.
correct to say that the special rules for physical presence requirement
Mhm.
exist for the golden visa. That is it.
Mhm.
What's important to know is that no matter how one obtained their residency, under certain conditions,
Mhm.
uh, they will still be uh, intact with the legal requirements for physical presence
Mhm.
if their absence is justified by the grounds of their residency.
Mhm.
Since our clients are getting the residency based on the contract with the university, which requires them to be outside Portugal, it provides them with certain flexibility. Although that flexibility comes from the exclusion from the general rule, not from the special rule, which is
Mhm.
applied to a certain type of residency.
Okay.
That is why it is important to always stress uh, towards the audience and that the physical presence requirements
Mhm.
are standard. One is supposed to be in the country, although there is a special rule which we apply, which allows
Mhm.
our clients to be outside the country. So far, we haven't had a single question from the immigration authorities with our
Mhm.
cases. But there is always a risks. Therefore, our service agreements are structured in a way that a client
Mhm.
will receive a certain refund in
Mhm.
case the residency permit is not extended.
Mhm. Okay. All right. So generally speaking, residency requirements for those on the pathway to citizenship are 6 in a calendar year, 6 consecutive months, or 9 and 12, right? So 9 months and 12. So you're saying under this program, there is a degree of flexibility, but there's nothing written. So basically, the longer you spend, the better off you're going to be.
Yeah.
But the less time you spend in Portugal, there's a risk that there may be issues with either the renewal of the residency or the citizenship application. But
Mhm.
up until this point, they have not questioned it, but they could in the future. They could. Is that a fair summary?
I would uh, correct you slightly. So
Please.
there is a legal there is an article in the legislation which
Mm-hmm.
explains how you can be outside and why you can be outside, and then you will
Okay.
still be considered in compliance with the physical presence requirements.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a general rule. So in order to
Mm-hmm.
comply with that general rule, we had to
Mm-hmm.
create the relationship with the universities in a certain manner. As for the rest, it is correct.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, in other words, if I'm to summarize it correctly, so for the time, if it is that one intends not to be resident in Portugal for a period of time during the calendar year, it will be wise to have a conversation with you slash the university to make sure that that situation doesn't create issues later on. Is that fair enough?
For every client, we have a curriculum which we
Mm-hmm.
put in place and
Mm-hmm.
sure that we fulfill the necessary requirements of cooperation.
Okay. Right. Okay. Right. So the physical presence requirements are driven by the curriculum.
So that is not correct. So the physical presence requirements are very
Mm-hmm.
simple, as you've
Yeah.
explained them before. When
Right.
the clients are outside the country, they're outside the
Mm-hmm.
country because that's
Mm-hmm.
that is required by the nature of their contract with the university. No matter how much time they
Mm-hmm.
spend outside the country, in
Mm-hmm.
reality, if it's not the requirement, that's already the failure.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Although, since the contract is allowing them to be outside and is demanding them to be outside, then no matter
Mm-hmm.
how little time they spend, it is still going to be in
Mm-hmm.
line with the requirements when they go for an extension.
Okay. Does the contract specify in terms of days how much time they can spend outside, or is it subject to discussion?
No, it does not specify. It is subject to
Mm-hmm.
an individual case always.
Okay. Gotcha. All right. All right. So I'll leave it there. Now, for those who do spend enough time in Portugal to trigger tax residence, or for those who, even though they may be non-resident traveling wherever they go, they maintain a place of habitual abode, and therefore they trigger tax residence in Portugal. What are your thoughts on the extreme changes to the NHR that are being proposed and apparently would be phased in from next year? What are your thoughts on the impact of programs such as this?
Well, obtaining the residency does not automatically trigger
Tax
becoming
residents. Yeah.
active.
Mhm.
Therefore, for the clients who are not spending more than 183 days in Portugal, and
Mhm.
those who do not have a permanent house in Portugal, this will
Mhm.
not lead to uh, this will not bring them into becoming tax
Mhm.
residents. For
Mhm.
those who are willing to relocate to the country and who want to become tax residents, it is obviously going to become a big issue, since it
Mhm.
is often it has often been one of the main motives to move, as I've mentioned before.
Mhm.
It has often been one of the main motives to move to Portugal.
Mhm.
First, there is citizenship. Second, there is a very special tax regime which allowed them to
Mhm.
be residents in the country, in Europe, and have very attractive tax regime for the private individuals.
Mhm.
Um, so we have to divide different scenarios for the ones who are moving to Portugal, for the
Mhm.
ones who are staying outside the country.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay. So potentially, uh, this this can have an impact for those, because you, as you mentioned, there are three reasons, and now one of them seems to be less compelling than before. So you're seeing that it would have an impact, but I guess it's yet to be seen how much of an impact this may have.
I can already confirm that,
Mhm.
for the abolition of an NHR is
Mhm.
a is going to have very is going to prevent is going to stop many potential new residents from moving to Portugal.
Mhm.
Uh, and we're
Mhm.
speaking about the high net worth individuals.
Mhm.
We're speaking about the very specific uh, group of immigrants. Um,
Mhm.
as for them, moving to Portugal was the way to have a very flexible tax regime,
Yeah. Mhm.
being in the country, being in Europe, and enjoying a beautiful country.
Mhm.
Um, there are countries which maintain uh, tax regimes very attractive for new residents. Spain,
Mhm.
Greece,
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
Malta, Cyprus. Um, Choosing a beautiful country to live in is one thing, although choosing a beautiful country to live in with a tax regime which will be favorable for a is it's a combination of two always.
Okay. As you mentioned Spain, what are your thoughts on Spain as as a destination versus Portugal now? Would you think, are you seeing, because you're there in the front lines, are you seeing people or clients kind of leaning towards Spain in a way that they previously didn't? Or do you still think that Portugal can hold its own?
So here is the so Spanish special tax regime, Beckham's law, um, has been there since 2003, and it's been quite well known. The amendments which have been introduced to the regime uh, this year,
Hmm.
if I'm not mistaken, that's January 2023, uh,
Correct. Hmm.
have allowed uh, remote workers working outside
Hmm.
Spain for
Hmm.
foreign companies move to Spain, become Spanish tax residents, and benefit from the special tax regime.
Hmm.
This is what changed the situation drastically, and this is what has made the tax regime in Spain uh, that attractive.
Hmm.
So one thing to remember is that Spanish tax authorities will always have grounds to doubt the motives for the relocation. They can always look at the and they can always requalify the
Hmm.
status, or maybe not the status, but uh, they can unpack your special tax regime and have a look at why you have effectively moved to Spain. whether
Mm-hmm.
there is that employment contract is actually being fulfilled, if there is any work done or not.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a tricky part of it. NHR had, despite being still complex and beneficial, has not had that issue.
Mm-hmm.
Beckham's law has a very strong ground, which is the reason to move to Spain is work. Number one, you continue to work for a company outside Spain. Still, the
Mm-hmm.
reason is you continue to work being based in Spain. There are all. I think that the chances for the Spanish tax authority, the grounds for Spanish tax authorities to revise an individual case are going to be there, and I think that there are already cases
Mm-hmm.
uh, of such kind.
Mm-hmm. Where, yeah, where, it was just like a sham company setup. It wasn't really doing any work, et cetera, right? Yeah,
Yes.
right. And with this, as you mentioned, with the startup visa, which was passed towards the end of last year and went into force earlier this year, it made the requirements for benefiting from the Beckham law easier for the applicant. Suddenly, they didn't need to set up a company, for example. Just the
Mhm.
fact that you have a relationship with an employer outside who's allowing you to work remotely, you get the letter, you get the paperwork, and suddenly you're able to benefit. So, in a way, the regime on its own became more attractive, it became more user friendly. And
Mhm.
now, hand in hand with this, is the revision of the NHR from a Portugal perspective, or to be fair, for many people, is the abolition of the NHR. You can try to
Uh-huh.
dress it up, but it has changed dramatically. So one would imagine that there will be implications going forward. Another jurisdiction you mentioned is Malta. What are your thoughts on what are you seeing on the field with Malta versus Portugal now?
You can really well when we're speaking about, first of all, Malta has a special tax regime,
Yeah,
which is, if I'm not mistaken, Malta GRP, Global Residence Program, which
yeah,
will allow
mm,
you to be resident in Malta, and with the declaration of not spending 183 days in any other country. But
hmm,
we need to remember that the like when one looks at Portugal
hmm,
and Spain, it
hmm,
is more seen as an actual relocation,
yeah,
not just for tax purposes.
hmm,
Uh,
hmm,
I cannot say that the amount of new residents in Portugal can be
hmm,
anyhow compared with the volumes of new residents in Malta,
hmm, hmm,
simply because, despite I love Malta,
hmm,
it's a great place to be. It's a
yeah,
great place to spend some time. It
hmm,
is very difficult to compare an island with a
hmm,
country located
hmm,
in a continent.
hmm,
So these are probably incomparable scenarios.
hmm,
Although the abolition of an NHR
hmm,
might become a driving force for that amount and volume of new immigrants to consider or
hmm,
start looking at a Malta, or maybe start looking at Italy's forfait, although
hmm,
Italian tax policy is not very consistent, and that's what has
hmm,
been preventing uh, many clients and high net worth individuals from making their choice. Yes, for Italy, we had
hmm,
many cases, despite Italy being uh, effectively cheaper than
hmm,
Switzerland.
hmm,
Uh,
hmm,
Many of our clients have been choosing uh, have have been choosing Switzerland over
hmm,
Italy, just
hmm,
for a simple reason of Switzerland's uh, consistency in their
hmm,
tax policy
hmm,
for foreign individuals.
hmm,
And you might have seen already in the news that there were some announcements related to the forfeit regime in Italy, that it might be changed. And it has only been there since
yeah,
2016, if I'm not mistaken.
hmm,
Uh,
hmm,
so that does not provide an investor migrant with a sense of extra security for their
hmm.
situations in the new countries.
Could you speak more about Switzerland and and its attractiveness in this whole investment migration space?
That's a very large topic
Yeah.
to cover, but
Uh-huh.
just that Switzerland, well, we know that Switzerland can be
Yeah.
attractive in certain
Yeah.
cases for certain
Mm-hmm.
family scenarios when
Mm-hmm.
people relocate to Switzerland, make an agreement with the tax authorities, which
Mm-hmm.
will allow them to pay a certain amount of tax,
Mm-hmm.
certain amount of tax based on their, I wouldn't
Mm-hmm.
know, based on their assumed income and assumed spendings
Mm-hmm.
combined together. And then but there are certain restrictions as well on what types
Mm-hmm.
of activities allowed for those individuals. They cannot be employed, they can be in
Mm-hmm.
boards of directors, but they cannot actively conduct business.
Mm-hmm.
By all means, um, these are tax regimes available there, and
Mm-hmm.
people who were looking at Switzerland were
Mm-hmm.
often going to Portugal first in order to spend
Mm-hmm.
some time in Europe, make their way to an EU passport, and
Mm-hmm.
then move to Switzerland simply because having an EU passport cuts 50% of the tax
Mm-hmm.
you one will pay as a third country national.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Uh, but well, it's just this topic has a lot more to
Mm-hmm.
discuss, and
Yeah.
there are many more layers of the
Mm-hmm.
conversation to
Mm-hmm.
uncover. Simply because, well, the Global Talent Portugal is a program. It's very structured. It's easy to explain.
Mm-hmm.
Tax system. Here's the
Mm-hmm.
immigration procedure. But when it goes to such topics, uh, to the topics related to why it might want to choose moving to
Mm-hmm.
Switzerland or Italy
Mm-hmm.
or
Mm-hmm.
Portugal, it involves a lot of individual case.
Completely understand. Completely understand. So just stepping back, generally speaking, the program that we're discussing, that Global Talent Portugal, it stands. It's attractive. Definitely more attractive from a price perspective than the Golden Visa, and in terms of processing time. It's more attractive in terms of less strenuous residence requirements than, let's say, D2, D7, the nomad options for Portugal. However, because of let's say, the evolution in the tax regime of the NHR, suddenly, it may lead some people in their own unique circumstances to consider other options, as you mentioned, Spain, Malta. Italy, probably not, because from a tax point of view, things have been less predictable. And Switzerland is just a completely different value proposition, so it shouldn't enter the conversation in the first place. So, have I summed it up more or less?
Well,
Yeah,
there's a lot in when making a
yeah.
decision
Mm-hmm.
relocation.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, you would have several layers of discussions,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
well, lifestyle in Portugal and lifestyle in Spain can be considered comparable, and the quality of life as well.
Mm-hmm.
Lifestyle in Switzerland, Italy, Spain, and Portugal would be completely different, and Switzerland would be aiming different type of potential taxpayers coming to the
Yes.
country,
Yes.
with different expectations and with
Mm-hmm.
different needs.
Mm-hmm.
Although I have to say that we do have clients who wanted to move to Switzerland initially, and then
Mm-hmm.
having spent some time in Portugal, they've made their decision to stay.
Mm-hmm.
And I doubt they've ever regretted their decision.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and given how quickly Portugal has been developing, it
Mm-hmm.
has been there becoming more and more attractive.
Yeah.
Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so lifestyle, taxes,
Mm-hmm.
a matter of personal choices. It's a
Mm-hmm.
very big combination, so it's difficult to say that. But then you're totally correct on saying that the abolition of NHR might definitely restrain newcomers to Portugal.
Okay. So having said that, what will be or who would be the perfect candidate for the Global Talent Portugal program? Generally speaking, what
90% of our clients are entrepreneurs
entrepreneurs, yeah. Okay.
of different calibers. We have clients who
Hmm.
have their companies traded in Nasdaq with the net worth of several billions. Some of our clients have relatively small businesses, retail, oil and gas,
Hmm.
I loads of IT people.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, so entrepreneurs.
Okay. So entrepreneurs, and so therefore there's a really a potential synergy with the university, genuine synergy with the university. Okay. And you mentioned it's families as well. Do they tend to have families, or are they looking at residency on their own? Is your typical
Families are
client?
eligible for obtaining residency as well. The
Yeah.
reunification obviously allowed.
Hmm. Hmm.
Children under 18.
Hmm.
Um, Also, the parents of both the main applicant and the
Hmm.
spouse. They're older than 65 in cases when
Hmm.
the parents are younger than 65, they have to be financially dependent. Same
Hmm.
goes to the kids who are older than 18, then they would
Hmm.
need to provide the proof of their enrollment in Portuguese institutions.
Understood. Gotcha. And just for example, I was looking at some data from earlier this year, and the number one source market for the golden visa for Portugal earlier this year, and we're having this conversation and towards the end of 2023. So we're looking at earlier in 2023. Number one source market was the US. Number two was the Philippines, at least at that particular point in time. What are the jurisdictions that the global talent Portugal? What are the source markets for typical
Our
candidates?
clients mainly from many countries
Okay.
in and India.
Hmm.
Well, we have not yet had a chance to promote our program more actively in the US.
Right.
It's yet to come for the next year,
Hmm.
but we've seen that there is a growing demand, and it's just that many clients from the States who we have, they're moving
Hmm.
to Portugal,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
for them, the abolition of NHR does not have any consequences since it's still
Exactly. Yeah.
they're still American citizens. They're still globally tax responsible, and
Hmm.
therefore the NHR is not going to be changing anything. It's just what I
Hmm.
see. What's interesting from what I've seen from working with the American market is that despite many want to actually move to Portugal, they still
Hmm.
for some reason choose golden visa. I don't know what the reason is. Uh,
Hmm.
I suppose since the industry is not really regulated, and you can often find
Hmm.
quite misleading information about the golden visa online and from different market players that it's 6 months, it's quick and it's easy.
Hmm.
It's never
Yeah.
been quick. It has always been challenging.
Exactly. Yeah.
The best
Yeah.
we were happy
Mm.
when a client's case from A to Z was a year and a half. So
Hmm.
yeah, and yeah.
Okay. Understood. Thank you very much for that. Timur, if somebody wanted to reach out to you and your team to find out more, what's the best way of finding you?
Well, we can just receive a request from the website, from the World Talents website on the
Okay.
forum, or they can reach you. You forward them to us.
Yeah, we're in regular touch. What's the URL for your website again?
It's worldtalents.com.
Worldtalents.com. Okay,
Yes, correct.
fantastic. Timur, thank you so much for your time and sharing your expertise.
Thank you. Thank you, Darren. It was a pleasure and a great opportunity. Thank you for that.
All right. And I'm just gonna switch off and